Yeah. Okay. So I'm Mrs. Vaughn, and I'm subbing for Mrs. Close, just to let you all know. We have two 12-minute 180s today and a 15-minute 200. Okay. So this is warm-up from one of the 12-minute
Takes.
180s. This is Mr. Sakani for the plaintiff, Mr. Cadigan for defense, and we have the court and the witness, and I am going to be the court.
I am the witness.
I am attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Sakani. I'm attorney for defense, Mr. Cadigan.
Okay, so our warm-up starts on page 209, which is the first page, and goes to, hopefully you have a cutoff on 215. We'll stop at the end of line 24.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll read this in 15. And to identify, did we do this? I am the court.
I am the witness.
I am the attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Sakani. I'm attorney for defense, Mr. Cadigan. 15.
15.
Begins with direct examination by Mr. Cadigan, for the record. Mr. Sackett, as to the times you testified to, are you clear as to those times?
Yes.
What was the time, the approximate time you arrived at Bill and Jean's?
Object. It's been asked and answered.
Your Honor, I'm trying to clarify the district attorney's question.
Objection is overruled. Can you answer that question?
It was between 5 and 9. I didn't have a watch on, you know.
We did have that answer before, Mr. Cadigan. You haven't clarified anything.
That's correct.
Ask another question.
You testified that when you left the apartment complex, Gerald was driving, is that correct?
Yes.
While Gerald was sitting in the passenger seat, correction, the driver's seat, did he? Was there any conversation between he and the man that walked up?
Objection. Exceed the scope of cross.
Your Honor, it does not. He went into the area.
It does exceed it. Your objection is overruled. Do you want to answer that question?
After he was in the driver's seat, you said?
While he was sitting in the driver's seat of the car, was there any conversation that you know of between Gerald and the man who walked up?
No, just left.
If there was any conversation between the man that walked up and anyone who was in the car, who did the man that walked up speak to?
Object. Calls for speculation.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for speculation. I'm saying if he did observe or hear any conversation, who was it in between?
First, you have to ask him if the man had any conversation with anyone. Lay a foundation.
Did the man who walked up have a conversation with anyone?
No.
After you left the apartment in Gerald's car, did Gerald continue to drive?
Objection. It's irrelevant.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, it's not irrelevant if I may be heard. I can explain the relevancy of it unless the district attorney would like me to give an offer of proof now.
Do you want to approach the bench? Ask another question, Mr. Cadigan.
Mr. Sackett, was the knife or gun ever pulled on Bill?
Objection. Leading.
Don't lead your witness, Mr. Cadigan. There's ample testimony to this point. Nothing of that nature was ever done, Mr. Cadigan.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have no further questions of Mr. Sackett.
I have no recross.
You may step down. You're excused. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Paul Best, but I'd have to see if he's outside to speak with him first, if I may.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Paul Best to the witness stand.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the cause now pending before the court shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Be seated on the witness stand. Would you state your name and spell it in full for the record, please?
Paul Darnell Best, Paul Darnell Best.
Mr. Best, do you know Gerald Sackett?
Yes.
How well do you know him?
I know him pretty good.
Is Mr. Sackett seated over to my right-hand side?
Yes.
On February 27th of this year, did you have occasion to go to an apartment complex on Norcade Circle?
Yes,
Who lived in that apartment that you visited?
Bill. I don't know his last name.
Okay, was anyone else living in that apartment?
Yes, his girlfriend.
Do you remember her name? What was her name? Do you remember her name?
No, I can't think of her name.
Okay, do you remember approximately what time you arrived?
About 7:30, 8. I don't know. It was after dark.
Who arrived there with you?
Me, Jerry, Calvin, and Jimmy.
When you arrived, was Bill's girlfriend there?
No,
How soon after you arrived did she arrive?
hour, 45 minutes, something like that.
Now, during the time when you were in the apartment, did you strike that? When the five of you, the five males were in the apartment, where were you located?
In the dining room.
During the time that you stayed in the apartment, strike that. At some point in time, did you have occasion to go to the bathroom of the apartment?
Yeah,
And when was that?
well, that was after she came home.
Now, later that evening, did you have occasion to visit the bathroom?
No, that was the only time.
How well did you know Jimmy?
I don't know him.
When had you met him as far as prior to this occasion?
A week.
During the time you were in the apartment on that evening, did you have occasion to notice whether or not Jimmy was speaking to the girlfriend Jean?
Only when I came out of the bathroom.
All right, and where was Jimmy speaking to Jean?
They were in the hallway right by the bathroom door.
Okay, after you came out of the bathroom, where did you go?
Back to the living room.
And who was in the living room at that time?
Calvin and Jerry, Bill.
After you came out of the bathroom, did you have occasion to go back to the bathroom area?
Yeah,
And when was that?
after Bill jumped up and ran back there and everybody followed.
Okay, when you say everybody, did you follow them also?
Yes,
Okay, when you arrived at the bathroom area, was the door to the bathroom open or closed?
it was open when I got there.
And what, if anything, did you observe in the bathroom?
I just seen, her name was Jean. That was her name. I had seen her with her blouse open.
Was there anyone else in the bathroom with her?
Jimmy was, I believe. I'm not sure.
Now, when you arrived at the bathroom door, was Bill saying anything at that point when you arrived at the bathroom door?
They were talking about something, but I didn't really hear. It was him and Jimmy.
After Jimmy and Bill had this conversation, did Bill stay at the bathroom door?
No, he ran outside,
After he ran out, did he run out of the apartment or out?
out of the apartment.
After he ran out, was he followed?
Yeah, by me and Calvin,
What was the purpose of you and Calvin following him?
because we were trying to calm him down, to tell him that everything would be all right, just to listen.
Did you have any idea as to why he had left the apartment?
He was hollering about calling the police.
Were you able to catch up to Bill?
Yeah, we caught up to him,
Where did you catch up to him?
just right around the corner from his apartment at another apartment.
Were you able to speak to Bill?
Yes, we talked to him.
What did you say to Bill?
We just told him, to come back upstairs and we'd get Jimmy and Jerry and we'll leave.
What was Bill's response?
He said, okay, just get them out of there.
Okay. Let's just hang on to that. What?
I don't think Stacy said anything.
What? Really?
I don't.
No, she objected.
Did she?
earlier.
Did she
Did it
object?
work by
Okay.
hitting translate? Because you're hooked up real time. You have to be hooked up to,
This is warm up from another 180. We have Mr. Gowdy for the plaintiff, pardon me, and Mr. Kestner for defense. And again, I am the court.
I am the witness.
I am attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Gowdy.
I'm attorney for defense, Mr. Kessler.
Okay, so we're moving to page 12. Oops, oh, I don't have a stapler. And reading to the end. And so we'll read this in same way, 15.
In 15,
Yes,
begins with, are you ready?
yes.
Okay. Begins with a question by Mr. Kessner for the record. Okay. And was it a rather quick jerking action of your vehicle to pull it to the side, or did you slowly veer towards the curb?
It was more of a slow action.
Okay. And did these individuals you observed during this entire activity, you talked about the one individual taking the rock out of the other individual's hand. You observed this during the travel between your first observations and where you stopped?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and after you stopped, did you see anything else suspicious?
Objection vague.
Overruled.
I don't know what you mean by suspicious.
Just when the car stopped and you were looking at these two people, what did you do right when the car stopped?
Mr. Henderson's right hand extended out in this fashion, his arm out in front of him, and he had a film container in his other hand, which would be his left hand. I then observed him drop both of those items, and both gentlemen began running.
All right, the officer indicated with his right hand, holding his hand up with his open palm up in front of him.
Now you're telling us you could see that there were actual white rocks during this period of time, the period of time you first saw this suspicious activity to the time you got in your car. You are saying you actually could clearly see white little rocks in his hands?
No, I observed the 3 to 4 white items being poured from the container initially, and then we stopped alongside of him. At that point, I could see the items again
When they were dropped, right?
when they were in his palm.
Okay, so although you were seated in your car on the street, you are saying you could still see white items in Mr. Henderson's hand?
Yes,
Okay, and what did those items appear to be?
small white items resembling rock cocaine.
And would it be fair to say that your head was positioned in the vehicle below where his hand was?
No, I could look directly out my passenger window and see his hand and 2 items in the palm of his hand.
Well, was his hand above or below your eye level as you were seated in the car?
I don't know exactly the position of my eyes and his hand, but I could see the 2 items in his hand.
Okay, you can return to your seat. Thank you, officer.
Thank you.
And you say that one of these individuals, as you exited your vehicle, well, actually both individuals began running, right?
Yes, sir.
And you saw more contraband drop to the ground, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they started running, is that correct? As you were exiting your vehicle in your uniform?
That is correct, yes.
You saw them look in your direction and then everything was thrown and they started running after they looked in your direction.
They looked in my direction prior to me even opening my door, and then they both turned and began running.
But that was pretty much simultaneous to your exiting the vehicle, is that correct?
They looked in our direction prior to us coming to a complete stop, and then they began running.
And where did the other individual run?
He ran around they both ran into the yard area of 135, and the other male ran along the west side of the house and into the rear yard. We pursued him. Mr. Henderson ran into the residence.
Okay, and you followed him in that residence?
Yes, I did.
And did you see him inside the residence?
Objection relevant.
Overruled.
As I entered, I walked through the rear of the residence.
And did someone draw your attention to him?
Someone in the residence yelled out, "Get out of my house, get out of my house," but I located him on my own.
And where did you find him in the house?
He was in the rear bedroom.
We are getting beyond the scope of direct and beyond the scope of the motion.
If I can have just a minute, Your Honor.
Yes.
Did you determine the type of clothing that was worn by this other person?
I believe it was dark clothing. I don't know if it's in the report or in the prelim transcript, but right now I don't recall.
And do you know what my client was wearing?
Once again, I'd have to refer to the face sheet of the police report.
At this time, you don't have a recollection of that, is that correct?
No.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor. Officer, just a couple things. Could you approach the diagram with the court's permission?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
With the red pin, can you mark 2 X's now on the proper location where the defendant and this other individual were standing?
They were standing on the sidewalk approximately here.
Can you circle the object you have drawn for your car when you corrected the diagram?
Here.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Recross.
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right, officer, you are excused from any further testimony in this proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you.
People rest.
Mr. Kestner?
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense would call Charles Watson.
Charles who?
Watson?
Okay. Mr. Watson, please come forward. Raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony which you are about to give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated, sir. Would you kindly state your name for the record?
Charles Watson.
Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Kestner.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Watson, would you please tell the court your profession and your involvement in this case?
Court-appointed investigator licensed by the state of California.
And as court-appointed investigator, were you appointed in this matter?
Yes, I was.
And pursuant to your activity as an investigator in this matter, did you go to the location depicted in Defense A, the immediate area between 123 West 59th and 135 West 59th?
Yes,
What time of day did you go there?
11:30.
Would that be PM?
Yes, PM.
And did you go there to make some observations and also to take some measurements of the relationship between the houses in that area?
Yes,
And in doing that, were you able to do that?
yes,
Okay. Now, if I could approach the diagram, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Watson, directing your attention to, I guess we have two versions of the area, but did you measure the distance between 123 and 135?
yes.
How did you do that measurement?
With the rolling tape measure?
Okay, and you prepared a report for your own information about these various measurements?
Yes.
And what was the distance between 135 and 123?
Objection, Your Honor. May I take the witness on voir dire to see if we refreshed his recollection? I believe I'm entitled to see that before he testifies.
Yes, Mr. Watson, did you refresh your recollection today from that report?
No, I haven't. I am just now seeing the report, so I have to refresh my memory from the report.
Okay,
Your Honor, as a portion of this,
just a minute.
now, do you want me to say 123 and 135? Is that how you normally say it?
What, addresses?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think it really matters, but that's how I would say it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, see, I use the number bar, so that's how I like my numbers read, but not everybody does, so.
Okay, let me pause this momentarily. This is warm up from the 200 that we will be doing in a moment. And we have Mr. Anderson for the plaintiff and Mr. Santiago for defense. Excuse me, I am the court.
I am the witness.
I am the attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Anderson.
I am attorney for defense, Mr. Santiago.
Okay, so we're doing, warm up starts on page 18, line 25. And let's read in 14s.
It's me again. Oh, jeez. Okay, begins with a question by Mr. Santiago. For the record. Then at some point you stopped, is that right?
Yes, I hesitated.
Were the defendants still standing there?
Yes,
Did Mr. Robles fire?
no,
Then you backed up again and you left?
yes,
Okay, do you recall at the preliminary hearing, the question that I asked you, was it also your testimony that he aimed the gun at the button that was keeping the door locked? Is that right? And you said to bust the window?
yes,
Do you remember?
yes,
that? And at the time, the muzzle of the gun was only about 4 or 5 inches away from you. Is that right?
yes,
Your Honor, I object to the previous question as speculation on the part of this witness and it's irrelevant. Ask that it be stricken, the answer, to bust the window.
Counsel, as to relevance, I think it's relevant to the intent in this matter.
Objection to the witness's ability to testify as to the intention of your client.
That is,
That is where I stand.
yes, Your Honor.
Sustained. Motion to strike is granted.
If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Of course, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, Ms. Trujillo,
yes,
when you observed Ms. Valdez, she did not at any time have a weapon in her possession. Is that correct?
no,
I believe you indicated or you testified that your window was rolled up during this incident.
yes,
And I believe you testified earlier, or your statement to the police was that you never heard any conversation between Ms. Valdez and Mr. Robles. Is that correct?
no conversation, no conversation.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Wait just a moment, excuse me, nothing further.
Just a moment.
Okay,
Mrs. Trujillo, I want you to just stand right over there. Let's assume that this chair here is the driver's seat of your car, and I know it might be a little wider. When the person came up with the gun and approached your car, show me how he pointed the gun. Okay, and did he keep it at that level while he was yelling at you?
yes.
Hold it up again and then indicate to me what he did with the gun when he shot.
What he did with it? They were at the driver's side. The gun was pointed at me and he kept saying, "Bitch, get out of the car." He swung it down and shot my window out or whatever.
May the record reflect the witness was simulating a rifle with both hands and seeing the rifle 8 inches to the right and 4 or 5 inches downward.
Yes, the record will so reflect. Okay, well, that wasn't very much, but I think that's all we have time for. So we will begin our takes with that, which is going to be a 15-minute 200.